And we're back. And it's been a minute. It's been a minute. About a year ago, I started putting videos up of myself doing Excel. And lately, it's degenerated into just some of those groundbreaking philosophical realizations that I've uh, I've espoused. But I wanted to get back to my roots and ultimately my day job, where I stream Netflix all day. And then on my other screen, I do this. I have I shaved my head today too. I have a piece of software by Microsoft. You might call it Microsoft, and this is Power BI. Assuming that BI stands for Business Intelligence, then yes, this is really the GOAT. I've never used Tableau, um, but really you don't need to. Tableau came out, I'm pretty sure, before Power BI. We got some Power BI going here, and I'm not gonna spoon feed you the download screen and how you get it up and running like that. That's your quest, okay? I'm like the monk in Nepal that you come see after you've trekked across the download the desktop version landscape, right? Get your staff, put a cloak over your head, and you know tell all your friends you're going to Nepal. So now we're in the temple, and I'm going to orient you to how this is laid out, and we're just going to do just a quick video. I'm not going to show you any god tier maneuvers yet. It's just my chair creaking, my gamer chair creaking. But I'm going to show you how this works. Okay, so this is the essentially le grimoire. This is where the spells get laid out, right? So if I've got we're going to work with some dummies today. So dummy Power BI data set. Well, you get the data in here in some fashion, and you do that through this get data. God, it doesn't even make sense. Like where do I go? Where do I go? It's very self-explanatory. This is not even, you should not be intimidated by this. If you've spent even 5 hours in the hellscape of most Excel files, Power BI will feel like a Cadillac, right? It'll feel like you're knocking on St. Peter's door, the gates of Purgatoire. Okay, so you go to get data and you can see you've got different formats that the Power BI software is already able to query in. And query, I work with people from the UK, and they always use the term query as if like ask a question. I suppose looking at the word itself, it looks like it's obviously sharing the same root as question, as question. So yeah, you're questioning the data. You can't see it now, but I'm moving my fingers in waves, right? You're questioning the data. So we're querying the data, right? We got a query eye for hopefully some straight tabular data that is in nice structures, right? Let me show you this data. Okay. Let me show you some dummies. So this is dummy data. I'm not gonna show you confidential client data or project company data, right? This I created. So we've got 5,000 rows or something like that. Really, the detail, you won't find the devil in these details, but essentially we have a column for project, a column for client, resources, cost type, on hold. Obviously, I work in project management, mostly on the Netflix streaming side, but yeah, so this is project data, right? We got our planned hours, we got our actual hours, we got our planned costs, we got our actual costs. We're all set up here for a solid PV&A, right? Solid PVA. So get your Pabst beer and let's start laying out the visuel. So this is your canvas, right? It's literally your canvas. And this right here, imagine you're like a video game character, okay? These are your weapons. And you didn't even have to pick them up along the way. Remember when you came from Canada? You came to Nepal? So that trek, you picked up in just that downloading of the software itself, you pick up all of these different features. So the one I like, let's just throw down a combo graph, okay? Look how easy that was. Literally, we click, we drop, and all of a sudden I'm a graphic designer. Now again, I'm glossing over the get data side. It is, if your data is in some Excel hellscape, it's not going to be pretty. And you're going to have to use the query editor, and more specifically the M language, to do the dirty work to get it in a good shape. So not all data wakes up like this, right? See this? Okay. If your company is heavily based on Excel, then your data will not look like this. God forbid your project's running on Excel files. And that's the thing with Excel files. People build them like dashboards. So Excel is fine if you build your files like this. But if you build it like a dashboard, don't be asking me to pull in a Excel Toyota Corolla dashboard and odometer and all. Don't ask me to bring that in if you've already had me put it into some Excel canvas, but I digress. So let's say the data is in good shape. I'll do another video. Don't you worry. Don't you worry, kids. For all the kids out there, we're just going to do the fun stuff. So all of a sudden, I'm a graphic designer, and we can start dropping in data. You want to drop in some data? What do you think? Okay. And this is this right here. So again, you select your ultimately. Are you using some oils today? Are you using watercolors? This is basically the types of coloring and shaping that this is your paint and your paintbrush. And then down here, these are the strokes. So let's do a few good strokes in here, okay? So we just laid in, x-axis, y-axis, right? So for all you XY chromosomers, this is your x-axis at the bottom, or X, and this is your y-axis, or Y. X, Y. X, Y. And we can start to remove things like quota, right? We don't need quota. Year, month, okay? And then, I love a good legend. Legends. We can drop in things like client. Look at that. Sadly, I've got 9 clients. Suppose not sadly, but. And you can see we've got the data on the x-axis, but because there's no data on the y-axis, we don't have any graphics. Just have this lonely legend. Kind of like me. Lonely legend in a bedroom home office. Okay, let's put in some planned cost. Look at that. This is ready, just like a crayons and cardboard masterpiece, right? You can see by client all the planned cost, right? I really care about client 4. They give good Christmas gifts. So you click on your legend, and Power BI will already start to show you what you're looking at. So say you've got, one of those god tier project managers who's saying like, show me client 2, boom. Show me client 4, boom. And here's what I like to do too, because some people like the crayons and cardboard, some people like the hard data. So I go like this. Watch this. Okay, you ready? Click, Control C, copy. Oh my God, what did he do? What did he do? He did this. Boom. Boom. Just like that. So you can start to actually change visuals in real time. And people are just like, wow. If you ever have a date, just ask her if she wants to come see your Power BI canvas. Okay. It works every time. And then you can just start flipping around. What do we want to see, right? But the purpose of what I was getting at here is you set it up like a table. Again, you can set it up like a pivot table or a pivot table de pivot. But I think we should just roll with a table for our purposes here. But so this data, I copied it right from this data. So this is telling me the same thing. Okay. So for those God tier board members, you've got the numbers if they want to see them. And they might say, "Oh, it's tiny." Focus mode. Here we are. Here we are. Now, we'll make this video quick. Um, you can also put in slicers. So anyone who's worked in Excel knows that you can do some slicing and dicing. There's Power Pivot, which is ultimately Power BI. It's basically Power Query Editor. Right? I've said to people before, if you know Power Pivot and Power Query, you're ready for Power BI. In fact, basically relegate your Excel to basically those little calculator jobs. When it comes to building graphs and stuff, don't even you don't need Excel. Okay, you do not need Excel for that. Excel, you know what I use Excel for? I always have a blank Excel sheet open for quick calculations, little goal seeks. It still has an immense amount of value in the daily life of a Netflix streamer, but it's actually better to be left there. When you start getting into building graphs and the stuff that like what I call raise fodder, raise and promotion fodder. When you start wanting to drop bombs like that, for that quarterly review, that's coming up, then you wanna use Power BI. Okay, so this is a slicer, right? So we got our table, which we copied from our graph, and now we want to filter by client. Remember that client? We really care about that one client. So let's do it. See this? Oh God, it's like those satisfying videos on YouTube, or I think it's called YouTube. But this is just, I could just click through this all day. Again, like I said, your next date. But look at this. Let's say it's like, I can't see, kid. Okay, well, let's do this. Watch. So this is your paintbrush. You want to select your paints and your colors, right? This is when you want to go in and, do a litmus test on one of the colors, okay? You want to add those extra brush strokes. You want to give your data that extra little bit of mythical value, okay? That is what can be explored in here. You can do all kinds of crazy things. In the visual pane, you can do specific things to the x-axis, right? You can manually set the minimum and maximum. Y-axis, same thing. You got a secondary y-axis for things like, let's say we wanted to add another level, okay? So we've got the value, the planned cost on the y-axis, and then on the secondary y-axis, which ultimately you can see indexes here, we've got the line, okay? So you can go in here, so within your format pane, individual, and then you can do all kinds of things. And really, I'm not going to spoon feed you here. You just need to go in and on that next date that you have, you can run through all this stuff, okay? The general tab is where you can do things like change the title. God tier analytics, GPD tier analytics. Okay. I want it like that. I want it bold. I want it centered. And then we can do things like this. Okay. You ready? You watching? Shade the area or plot the background. Oh, I should do it now. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But let's just say, join me on my next video. I'm going to get kooky here with this plot area background. But do things like add borders, add shadows, you know, you can add border. Let's add border to this. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Okay. So we've got our slicer, right? So we can, we're all ready for that next dashboard meeting. You know those dashboard meetings that are so fun? We're ready. Okay. So we've got our numbers in here. We've got our table of the numbers, right? And at this point, we're almost like, let's say the question was to show the sum of planned cost by date with slicing by client. And you know what? We want to show the hours too. We want to see the relationship between the hours and the cost. We're all set up. And if you wanted to permanently fix, this is the last thing I'm really just making this up as I go. If that's not clear by now, then I don't think you've been paying attention. But the filter pane, right? So we've got the data pane, right? We've got the format pane, essentially the build your visuals pane, and then we've got the filters pane. And let's say I wanted to filter on something specifically. So let's say I want it to be, let's not filter year. Let's filter by month. Let's say, by client. Remember that client we cared about? Let's filter by client 5. Okay, so you can put essentially a permanent filter in, and let's say we only care about Octobers. Okay, you can see we still have the year on the bottom, and then we can see the October by year. And let's say we only care about, is it going to catch? Is it going to catch? It's not going to catch. But you get what I'm saying, right? You're picking up what I'm throwing down. You can set a permanent filter in here, or what I call a static filter, or you can do a dynamic filter like this. And look at that. You just got a raise. Thank me later. So that's the basics of just once you get the data in, right? Again, I've presupposed that you've trekked to Nepal, you've downloaded the Power BI desktop on that Nepal journey. So you have data in a good spot, right? This is your table. It's something like, you could write home about this data. This obviously is not presentable yet, but you've got all the basics of what you need to start putting in some God tier measures, putting in your titles and putting in the little comments, narrative section, etc. And so again, your graphics, this is your visual pane, your canvas. This is your table. If you have multiple tables, then you'd be able to navigate through them here. This is where we can start doing star schemas and such, modeling basically building relationships. This is where this is what I'm so good at, the matchmaker, right? So I like to find two disparate tables, but tables that are ultimately in good shape, and I like to relate them together and then run measures off of them. All this stuff, let's not get too deep into. So basically, that's the interface. Like, does it seem hard? I'm not smart. I'm lazy. That's how I got good at this. Okay. If you're lazy, whip out your canvas, whip out your paintbrush, start getting it in. Okay. But the last thing, this is what I'm going to leave you with. This is only easy. Like you saw how we were just just teeing it up, right? Just teeing it up, right? You saw what we were doing, okay? You can only do that if you have good data, okay? So there's really three main skills in Power BI. This is what I'm going to ultimately leave you with. There's the query editor, which is ultimately the M language, which I'll get into in a different video. So that's basically bringing your data in, right? That's the questioning of the data, okay? Then there's the measures, and that's done in DAX. And we don't have any put in yet, but it allows you to do very lightweight, complex calculations without having to open up the query editor and do all kinds of joins and appendments and merges, etc. You can get your tables in good shape, relate them. Remember that matchmaker, the dating game here, right? This is where this is the nightclub of tables. Okay, relate them and then run measures off of them. So you could have 20 tables, and if they're all tied back to appropriately built reference tables, then you can do so much more heavy lifting in this interface than you could ever do in Excel. Because again, Power BI is built for speed. Ultimately, that's how I see it. It's built for visualization, but it's also built for speed. So it's not necessarily meant to do all the heavy lifting of the, like it's not. SQL would be more of like your transport truck doing the heavy lifting. This is more of that last mile, right? That Amazon guy that brings it to your door. Okay, that's what Power BI is. So it is very lightweight. Um, so there's the query editor, there's the DAX measures. So it's the cleaning and the structuring of the data, the analytics and calculations, and then there's the actual graphic design where you get to make it look pretty. And that's not my forte. I hate that part. I like honestly, my favorite is the query editor because you're moving mountains and earth. So maybe in the next video I'll probably get into that, and then I'll get into some DAX. Really, you could build a series around each of these topics, but I'll get into some DAX, and then we'll talk about how we can pull from the web and automate and blah blah blah. But um, yeah, these are ultimately meant to kind of function like apps, right? Your power, not that. Yeah. So your Power BI, right? Like you can create kind of a mobile app with your Power BI. So and that's where the graphic design becomes massive. So anyway, that's all for now. If you've watched this long, I strongly suggest that you get a hobby. But if you're like me, this just might be your hobby. Until our next time together. Phil McKean, signing off.